you do say that fawning is, quote, the bravest, hardest work anyone can do, particularly if you're challenging insecure, narcissistic people. But I always encourage people, if they're going to play the what if game, oh, what if I say something and, they don't like it? I think it's okay to play the what if game if you play it out all the way to the end. What if I say something and they don't like it? Well, okay, then they might do this. Well, all right, well, then what if that happens? Well, then this would happen. Well, then what if that happens? You play it out to the absolute end because monsters live in the dark. And if you play it out all the way to the end, they can kill you, but they can't eat you. So maybe you have to find another job, or
Right.
maybe your mate says, "Look, you're right. I will only let you stay around if you shut up and do what I tell you." And it's better to find that out now than it is later.
That's right. I wholeheartedly believe that. And I'll say, even in terms of deciding to come forward with my own personal experience, talk about feeling like a risk. I thought, I'm going to go on Instagram, and not only am I going to share my experience of crawling out of complex trauma in real time, but I'm also going to do it with like a sing-songy sort of jazz hands in the air, because I was a singer-songwriter in my former life, and that's a part of me too. And I thought, I'm about to tank any credibility that I've been able to sort of garner. And yet I felt like, listen, if I can't be all of me in one place at one time, if that really does, in fact, tank my career as a clinical psychologist, I had to come to the place where I was like, well, maybe I'm not meant to be a clinical psychologist, right? Let's see what it actually looks like to be me in my life. And of course, it's not what happened. I got more opportunities than I ever could have imagined. And I see that happen for my clients all the time. The what if, even if it feels like it's the most terrible thing, I would not be here talking about this work if it wasn't giving people back a life beyond their wildest, unbelievable dreams. I'm not saying they're not walking through terror to get there. I'm not saying it's not the hardest thing they've ever done. I'm saying it's 100% worth it.
How do you think mainstream psychology is responding to this concept of fawning?
I think there's probably lots of opinions out there, and some people have questioned, well, let me see the data, let me see the evidence. And I say, listen, there's absolutely place in our field for evidence-based practice, and I'm grateful for it. But oftentimes what we have to start with is practice-based evidence. And that is where my work is coming from. It's in lived experience, it's in case study, it's in exploring something so deeply so that we can mine all the nooks and crannies and ultimately do the research, do the data, formulate, beyond what we know now in terms of tools that are effective. So at this point, I'm not interested in a debate about, is this a thing? Is it not a thing? I'm interested in really saving people's lives. And that means restoring them to a place where they have a sense of themselves and agency and aren't chronically abandoning all the time. This is the most helpful paradigm I have ever encountered. So this conceptualization as it is right now, I would say it works. And so certainly there are going to people say, well, that's just old school codependency, or that's conscious manipulation. And honestly, I feel sad about that, because I know that those people are the ones doing more harm to people that are asking for help that probably need it the most. So that's my bias.
I think the important thing is, if we're going to meet our patient population where they are, and we're going to meet them with a symbol system that they understand and can relate to, and as you say, a lens and a language that they can comprehend and use when they leave the therapy session, and they can go out and say, okay, this is where I can apply what we talked about.
Right.
This is the interactive patterns that we discussed. This is not a bunch of 75-cent words that you got to have a PhD to understand. These are things with verbs in the sentences that I can change what I am doing and expect a different result. Then the empirical data suggests that change can come from that. whatever symbol system we use to get that through seems to me to be a valid approach. And I think people understand, particularly in a relationship scenario, that this is something that more people than we would have originally thought wind up in a fawning situation, and you're giving them a pathway with guideposts out of this.
That's my greatest hope. Yeah.
And I know it's got to be rewarding when people come back and say, hey, I get this, and I can see, again, not a success-only journey, but I can see where I do have the power to create a different experience. And you talk about that with some of the case studies.
Yeah, even just the ability to make sense to themselves, to see themselves. I think some of the most common feedback I'm getting, the book's only been out for a few weeks, but getting these emails from people like, you've been reading my journal. Like, how do you know me this intimately? These are things I've never talked about that I didn't even dare bring up to my therapist. How many of us have been fawning for our therapists, right? Like, we want the therapist to think they're doing a good job. And, oh, yes, that intervention was so helpful. Meanwhile, we're sitting there going like, oh my God, I'm totally broken. This isn't going anywhere. But we can't even engage in conflict with the therapist. So we get stuck in cycles there, right? So yes, my clients' experiences of showing, one comes to mind as you were talking. Her name is Frances in the book. And it was so profound that at first she really understood these concepts. She understood what she felt and how she wanted to advocate herself when she was sitting on my couch in my office. And then she would leave, and it was like all of it would sort of dissolve, and she'd go back into that homeostasis, right? Just reflexively fall back into the old patterns. But one day she was sitting on her own couch at home, and she saw her partner's behavior for what it was. And it was like she instantly integrated in that moment. Everything she was able to hold on my couch, she was able to hold on her own couch, and she could show up for herself differently. We talk about trauma healing as a bottom-up, organic movement. It's generally not a top-down, well, let me convince myself I need to do it differently. And that's exactly what happened for her. She knew these things for a long time, but it was when her body could hold them and know them in the moment that it truly changed her life.
I think one of the important things that I think is critical that you do, and it's your step 4, and it's reducing shame.
Yes.
There's such a stigma associated with so many of the things that you're talking about because it comes from trauma, because a lot of it comes from early life experiences. But when you can reduce shame so people don't feel like, I don't even want to think about this alone with myself. When you take shame away, then it can be put up on top of the table and say, we can talk about this openly. Even with myself, I can talk about it openly now. I think that is a huge deal.
It is probably the most important thing that I do in all of my work and all of my writing and everything on social media. In fact, it's why I went on social media more as a survivor of childhood trauma than, hi, I'm Dr. Ingrid Clayton. I'm going to tell you a few things because I'm a clinical psychologist, because it reduced the shame. People saw me going first, right? If I can even laugh about these things, sing about these things, present it in a way that's in a story that people can understand, I'm giving them a shot, right? They don't have a shot if they're mired in shame. And I lived there for so long, literally chronic shame 24/7. Lowering that bar is profound. And often as therapists, I say we do have to go first, right? We have to go first, not always in disclosing our personal story, but saying, hey, are there things that we're not talking about? Is there something you haven't been able to tell me? Have I ever pissed you off, right? What would it be like for you to even imagine telling me that? We have to create so much room for people to be able to step in. You talked about that contrast that your body had between who you were in sports and who you were in family life. I think a lot of times we have to give people the contrast of being able to go, oh, I can be safe in this exact experience of expressing discomfort or a need or conflict. That's the contrast that most people need, is that I can do this without being annihilated.
Yeah, and some people don't have that opportunity. We were poor, and my dad was a drunk, and so you go home, you never know if the utilities are going to be on, if the car's going to be repossessed, if the windows are going to be kicked out of the house. But then you go over here on a Friday night, here's all of these people standing up screaming and yelling and cheering for you, and you think, can I really be that bad?
Right.
You have this brotherhood, this bonding with your team and stuff. And so you're saying you can't have these both at the same time. One of them's got to be right and the other's got to be wrong. And you get to make a choice. For most people, they don't have that clear contrast. And so they've got to find a way where they can star in their own life, whether they're a plumber or a housewife or someone that, doesn't have people cheering for them. They've got to applaud themselves. They've got to be their own best friend and star in their own life. And if they can do that, and that's what you're helping them do, and eliminating shame where it's okay to talk about, it's a big step. I just think that's a big deal.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Thank you for noticing.
I think this book is going to be a huge success. And I think the people that are hearing us talk about it are going to be really recognize in their own lives where these things are happening, and that you're showing them, as I say, some guideposts out. You're talking about what it is and why we do it, and helping them understand if they fall into that category or somebody they love falls into that category. So you didn't just sit down and jot this stuff down. It's obvious that you put a lot of thought into this.
Few decades in the making. That's what I say. Did I write the book in a year? Or did I write it in 38 years? Both are true, right?
Exactly. And I know what you mean. I had one book, I did 2/3 of it in about 3 days, 2 years in 3 days. It just all started clicking. I couldn't record fast enough. I'm finding tapes, stacking them up and getting people to type them up and stuff. And, but it was 3 years and 3 days.
I love that feeling when it just starts coming hard and fast and you've got to do everything you can to capture it, It's powerful.
Yeah, I'm thinking, why couldn't I have just started these 3 days and skipped the other couple of years? But it's a lot of work, and congratulations on this. I thank you for doing this. And again, I want to tell people the book is Fawning, Why the Need to Please Makes Us Lose Ourselves, and probably the most important part of this entire title, even though it's a subtitle, is How to Find Our Way Back. And it's by Ingrid Clayton, PhD. She's put a lot into this, and I think it makes not only common sense, but clinical sense. And it's written in a way that you can understand and you can use and you can implement. It may be a wrapped up trip for you. It may be the beginning of a trip that leads you to get somebody to help you through this. But I can tell you what, it is thought-provoking, and whether you find that it fits you or somebody that you love and care about, I highly recommend it. It's an interesting read. It is a courageous writing in terms of sharing her own story and that of some of the people that she's worked with. So I highly recommend it. So thank you much for taking the time to talk to me today.
Thank you for that incredible endorsement and a really rich conversation. It's meant a lot to me. Thanks, Dr. Phil.
Thanks so much. We'll talk soon.